So I think it goes without saying that housing prices have gone up exponentially. When I built this house in 2009, I built it for $109,000. It is a little over 1,500 square foot, one level, and it also has a basement, which is unfinished, but if you combine the two levels, it's over 3,000 square foot. And it would be very hard to find a house or to build a house for $109,000 in today's modern age. And I don't even need to say that because you know that already. I mean, the cost of this house now, I think it appraises for, I don't know, $400,000 or something like that. So just within the last, 15, 16 years, it's gone up $300,000, which is absolutely freaking insane. But the thing about this is that I will never sell this house. But why is that? Even though I'd be making $300,000 or more on this house, why would I never sell it? Well, because I paid it off. And I paid it off in 4 years, actually less than 4 years. I paid it off in 3 years and 11 months. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. I want to talk about how I did that and how even in today's modern age, with things as expensive as they are, how I could do it again. And I also want to talk about how I did it making a salary that was $70,000 or less. And in my case, I had a 30-year mortgage, and there was a very specific reason why I went with a 30-year instead of a 15. So let's dive into this topic. All right, so when I built this house, I had always planned from day one, when I first knew I was going to move out of my parents' house and move out of my own, I knew I was going to build my own house. And not only did I know I was going to build my own house, but I knew that when I built my house, I wanted to set myself up in a way that I would be able to sustain myself on minimum wage. That way, no matter what happened, if I lost my job or if something happened with the economy, I wasn't going to lose my house. So what I did, except for 1 year when I moved away from college, is I lived at home with my parents until I was 25. All right, now for some people that may not even be an option, but thankfully I have a great relationship with my parents, and they allowed me to do that, knowing that I was working towards saving up money so I could build a house. And that's exactly what I did. So in 2005, I started a career that I was very passionate about, and on day one, I was making $20 an hour, which back in 2009, that's actually not too bad. But the important thing to keep in mind here is that from 2005 to 2013, when I paid my house off, I didn't break $70,000. I was making like 60 some thousand dollars, like $62,000, $63,000. And that's coming from the first few years where I was only making like $20 an hour up to 2013 where I was making, 60 some thousand dollars a year. But from 2005 to 2009, when I moved into this house, I was living with my parents. So that's 4 years that I was basically just saving as much money as I possibly could. And that didn't mean I didn't live my life, but I was just very frugal with my money, and I didn't go out and buy a bunch of stupid stuff. I bought used vehicles, and that's about it. And I didn't have any bills except for, car insurance and registration and stuff like that for my vehicle. So that saved me a ton of money, and I was able to put away quite a bit of money before I even built my house. And what I ended up doing is I ended up fronting about $45,000 of my own money to put into this house. That way the loan that I pulled out was a lot less, because back in 2009, that was right after the 2008 financial collapse where the housing market basically tanked and mortgage rates were about 5 to 6%. I ended up getting mine for 5, which is pretty darn high. And it was a 30-year mortgage. And I didn't want to pull out a mortgage for the entire amount. So I was like, you know what? I saved up all this money and I forked out $45,000 up front. That way my mortgage was low. And that allowed me to save a lot more money on the back end, because my payments on a $75,000 loan for 30 years was only $431 a month, which is really not bad. So since my payments were so low, even after I moved in here, I was still banking and saving a lot of money. I still live my life very frugally. I don't go out and buy a bunch of stupid stuff. I don't blow money. I just save as much as I possibly can, because I knew very early on that I wanted to be financially secure. So that's exactly what I did. And the crazy thing about this is that my mortgage company would send me a bill right after I would pay one. And I didn't realize this because I was traveling so much with work and stuff. I just wasn't really paying attention. So when I got the bill, I would pay it. And then like a week or two later, I would get another bill. And I just kept paying them. So what ended up happening is I ended up paying my mortgage ahead by years. I'm talking like years and years, where my next payment wasn't due for like 5 or 6 years. And when I finally saw that on my mortgage, I was like, holy freaking crap. I had paid down so much of the principal because I wasn't paying any interest that within just a few years, I had paid down over, I think, $12,000. And when I saw that, I went from like 75 grand to I think $63,000. I was like, by that point, I had saved up so much money. I just went ahead and paid it off. So I contacted my mortgage company and I said, look, I'm ready to pay this thing off. Send me how much the payoff's going to be. I'm just going to write a check and do this. And that was in 2013. So from September 2009 to August of 2013, I had enough money saved up, making less than $70,000 a year, just in the mid 60s, to pay off a $75,000 loan. And another important thing to keep in mind is that the land I built this house on, I bought that and I paid cash for it. So that's something else. You know, not only did I fork out $45,000 of my own money up front to build this house, I also wrote a $26,000 check for the property before I built this house. And on top of that, in 2010, I actually bought more property that is next to the property where my house sits, and I paid over $6,000 for that piece. So there's $77,000 of my own money that I saved up and spent between 2005 and 2013 when I paid my house off. So when you combined all the money I spent on my land, all the money I fronted to build this house, then you include the mortgage that I paid off and all the furnishings for this house, between 2005 and 2013, I ended up saving and spending about $152,000 of my own money, making a salary that was less than $70,000 a year. And beyond that, paying that mortgage off did not wipe out my savings, so I still have money left over. But you know, my reasoning behind paying this thing off, because a lot of people will say, well, just have a mortgage, you know, it's not worth paying stuff off. It's not worth using all your savings to pay off a loan. And my thoughts on that is the exact opposite. I want to get any kind of money that's held over my head out of the way as fast as possible, because that's just more money I can save. So by me paying that loan off in 4 years, from then on, the only bills I've had is insurance, taxes and registration, and utilities. And that is it. So I've reduced my expenses down to the bare minimum, and I've been able to save like 90% of my money. And that has set me up very well in life. It's allowed me to retire out of the workforce by the age of 39, because from 2013 to the time that I retired out in 2024, I saved pretty much everything I made. And again, I was still living in my life and I still allowed myself to go out and do things, but I was just very mindful about how I spent my money. And my motto from then on has always been that if I can't pay cash for something, I won't own it, because I will not go in debt again. The first thing I did before I paid off my house was paid off student loans. And then after student loans, I paid off my house. And I'm convinced that I will never be in debt ever again. Because when you're in debt, you have a financial obligation to something external. Instead of something that you want to spend money on, you have to pay this loan off. And not only are you paying the loan off, but you're paying all this interest. So if you can imagine a $75,000 loan, how much interest I would end up paying after 30 years. I wanted to pay that thing off as fast as possible to get that out of the way so that I can start saving money for the things that I want to do in life. So that I can start living my dreams and pursuing my passions and not have to worry about this money that's being held over my head and the possibility of something happening financially and the bank being able to come in and repossess my home. I mean, granted, there's still a possibility of that because property taxes, but when your property taxes are only about $1,500 a year, you can make enough money doing pretty much anything to make $1,500 a year to pay your property taxes. But in order for me to pay my house off in less than 4 years, making $60-some thousand a year, it really just boiled down to living life a little more frugally, not spending money on a bunch of stupid stuff. I didn't have streaming services. I never paid for TV. I didn't go out and buy new phones. I didn't buy clothing, like designer clothing, anything like that. Everything I bought was either secondhand or very, very cheap from discount stores. Again, never bought a new vehicle. That's something I will never do because it's a massive waste of money. And I just avoided getting loans on anything. I didn't have loans on anything except my house, and that's basically the way I've led my life, because obviously the more debt you have, that's more money that's leaving your bank account every single month because you have that financial obligation. I also never maxed out my credit cards. I use my credit card for petty expenses, and I pay it off every single month. And right now, that's the only thing that keeps my credit high, because I'm paying my credit card off every month. But I never pay interest on it because I'm paying it down every single month. And that's a great thing, because with the credit card I have, which is Bank of America, I get points every time I use it. So every 1 to 2 years, I get $1,000 paycheck just from using that credit card. And as long as you're not maxing it out, or as long as you're not making payments on it and having to pay interest, because interest rates are like 20% on those stupid things, then it's great, because there's a lot of benefits. But you have to be very, very smart with these things, because the way the modern world is set up is it's made for us to be consumers. It's all about materialistic stuff. It's this consumerism mindset, and it really keeps you trapped, because if you run out and you just spend your money on the next newest thing, every time the next newest thing comes out, you're going to be blowing all your money, and you won't have any money to put back. I'm talking everything from streaming services, phone bills, car payments, convenience foods, fast foods, going out to eat, all this stuff. We are just constantly being inundated with all this marketing that tells us we got to keep up with the Joneses, and we got to go out and we got to buy all this new stuff. But I'm telling you right now, if you do that, it's going to keep you trapped, and you'll never get ahead. And by me getting away from that mindset, I was able to accomplish all the things I was able to accomplish in a very short amount of time, making a very non-impressive wage. And that's true for my entire career, because I've never had a six-figure salary. And even when I retired out at 39, I still had never had a six-figure salary. So it is possible to do amazing things and to set yourself up to be very financially secure without making that much money. And I'm living proof of that. So as you can see, there's no secret formula. There's no special equations. I didn't invest. I didn't put my money in Bitcoin or the stocks or anything like that. I'm just an average guy. I'm not rich. I've just lived my life very simply. I live my life very frugally. And hopefully this just kind of highlights and really shows you what is possible on an average wage. So if you take one thing away from this video, just let it be that you don't need to make $1 million to make ends meet. You don't have to make $200,000 a year to make ends meet, or even $100,000 a year. When it comes to being financially secure and living a stress-free life, when it comes to money, it's all about living below your means. Saving your money, not running out and buying a bunch of stupid stuff, and just being frugal. And that doesn't mean not living your life. It just means making smarter financial choices and not buying into this consumerism mindset. It means living below your means, not going into debt up to your eyeballs and having tons of payments on stuff that you probably don't need. And if you're one of the people out there that's watching this video and you're making $60,000 or $70,000 a year, or even $50,000 a year, you can get ahead. And I know a lot of people is going to say that, well, inflation's a lot higher now, things cost a lot more. But things don't cost that much more. It's still possible to save money as long as you're living below your means and you're not spending more than you're making. And if you're struggling to make ends meet and you're having a hard time saving money, I would highly encourage you, do an audit on what you're spending money on. Take your emotions out of it and look at things very objectively. And think about what you need and what you don't. If you have a brand new car and you're making payments on that, that means you're also paying a lot on insurance and taxes and registration. Ask yourself, do you really need a brand new car? Because I can tell you that I've driven an hour one way back and forth to work for over a decade, driving a very old car that cost me $160. And when it comes to mechanical problems, I've had more mechanical problems out of the newer stuff than I have the older stuff. So again, ask yourself, do you really need a brand new car? Do you really need a brand new phone? Can you get by with something older? Can you buy stuff that's secondhand? Do you really need all these streaming services, or can you get by with the free stuff on Fire Stick or Roku? And if you look at this stuff objectively, I think that you'll see that none of this stuff is essential. You don't have to have it. These are all commodities. But you have to be very honest with yourself about these things and really think about what you can live without. And one of the best ways to do that is to imagine a world where you're the only one in it. You're the last living person on the planet. And when you imagine that, I want you to think about what would be important to you. Would you have to have all these streaming services? Would you have to have a mansion, a big house on a hill? Would you have to have a brand new car? Would any of this stuff that you think matters now, would it matter? Or would you be more focused on surviving, food, health, connection, relationships, communication, all this stuff that you can't really put value on? Would you be focused more on that? And I can almost guarantee that if there's nobody around to judge you and to see what you have and to compare yourself to, I bet your priorities would change. I bet you would be focused on a lot more fundamental and basic things and not this consumerism, materialistic crap, this stuff that we're led to believe that we need. When in all actuality, we don't need any of it. We can get by with a lot less. And from my experience from doing that, there'll be a lot of doors that start to open and you'll really start to see what's possible.